Unaware his wife secretly had a $50 million inheritance, he threw his wife, pregnant with triplets, out of their home in the rain. What she did next ruined him. He didn't just lose his temper. He took the woman who carried his 3 unborn children, walked her to the front door of the home they built together, and pushed her out while the sky opened above them. That night, Elena Carter, 8 months pregnant with triplets, stood on the porch with her suitcase at her feet and rain soaking through her clothes. Inside, the man she loved, her husband Daniel, locked the door with shaking hands and shouted through the wood, "I won't raise another man's kids." He thought he was protecting himself from betrayal. He thought she was using him. He thought she had nowhere to go. What Daniel never knew was this: the quiet, soft-spoken wife he just threw into the storm was the sole heir to a $50 million inheritance. Her late grandfather had left her a fortune big enough to buy 10 houses like his, with one condition: use it only when you need to save yourself. That night, as the rain hit her face and her body started to give out, a call went unanswered. A neighbor watched from behind the blinds and reached for her phone, and a chain of events began. Legal, emotional, and devastating, that would turn Daniel from a proud provider into a man begging for mercy in a room he never thought he'd stand in. He believed he was throwing out a helpless woman. He had no idea he was pushing away the only person who could have saved his life, his name, and his future. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. Watching without subscribing is like letting Elena's story be buried under his version of events. When you click that button, you stand with every woman doubted, every mother abandoned, and every quiet heart that chose justice over revenge. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The scream hits first, not a loud scream, just a sharp, panicked gasp from Elena Carter as a shelf slips from her hand and almost crashes onto the wooden nursery floor. Her pregnant belly tightens, her breath quickens, and her hand shoots out to steady herself on the crib rail. For one intense moment, everything in the room feels wrong. The air, the trembling in her fingers, the sudden racing of her pulse. Then the moment softens. Elena, 28, gentle-faced, with soft brown eyes that always carried more kindness than she ever received, rests her forehead against the crib. She whispers to the 3 little lives inside her, promising them calm. Her voice, as always, is tender and quiet. She was raised that way, raised to speak softly, think carefully, and love wholeheartedly. Her story began long before this nursery. Elena grew up under the care of her grandfather, Henry Aldridge, a stern yet loving man known for his discipline, old-fashioned manners, and quiet wealth. He came from an old money family that believed dignity mattered more than showing off. He taught Elena that real value wasn't in what you own, but in how you treated people. To the world, Elena appeared modest, even simple. But hidden in her heart and under the floorboards of this very room lay something she almost never spoke of: a sealed inheritance letter, a letter her grandfather gave her on his deathbed when she was only 22. She still remembered his trembling fingers as he pressed it into her hands. "Use this only if you need to save yourself," he had whispered, not to gain power, not to boast, to save herself. Inside that letter lay the instructions and access code to a $50 million inheritance. The full legal documents were with Henry's trusted lawyer, Arthur Lennox, but the letter carried the condition, the contact information, and the final blessing. She hadn't touched a cent. She never even told her husband Daniel about it. She wanted a marriage built on love, not fortune. Her grandfather warned her that wealth attracts takers, and she believed him enough to stay silent. So she lived simply, lovingly. She bought nothing expensive. She dressed plainly. She acted as though she came from nothing, because she wanted her husband to love her for her heart, not her bank account. Daniel Carter, 32, tall, confident, charming in public, was the man she fell for because he once seemed gentle and hardworking. She met him at a community volunteering event where he held elderly hands and pushed wheelchairs with care. Or at least, that was the man he pretended to be. Now, years later, his laughter echoed from downstairs. Not the warm laughter she once knew. This one was different, sharper, and tainted with people she didn't know well. Downstairs sat 2 men she rarely felt comfortable around, even though they came over more often in the last few months. Mark Turner, around 35, Daniel's closest co-worker. Mark was known for money problems and bad decisions, yet Daniel trusted him more than anyone at work. And Theo Briggs, 33, handsome, polished, obsessed with his reputation. Theo feared gossip more than truth, and he followed Daniel around like a shadow to protect his own image. Elena paused on the nursery carpet, holding a tiny baby onesie. She loved preparing this room. She loved imagining three small heads sleeping side by side, those soft breaths filling the silence at night. This was her dream. This was her life's joy. But something had changed in Daniel lately. His jokes felt emptier, his smile shorter, his touch colder. And every time his phone buzzed, he looked at it with the kind of fear that made Elena's stomach twist. In the last couple of weeks, he'd seemed half present, like his mind lived in another room she was never allowed to enter. She didn't know it yet, but the quiet distance creeping into their home had a name, a woman's name, and two allies on her side. As she placed the last blanket into the crib, she felt a shiver crawl up her spine. Not from cold, something else. Something wrong she couldn't name. She walked downstairs, rubbing her belly in slow circles. The moment Daniel saw her, his hand froze halfway to lifting his phone. His eyes darted, anxious, trapped, as if he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't. Elena smiled gently despite the unease swirling inside her. "Dinner is ready," she said softly. Daniel turned toward the fridge, pretending to reach for water. But his eyes landed on something else instead. The ultrasound photo she hung there earlier. The image of three tiny shapes curled together inside her. His body stiffened. His hand trembled. His jaw tightened with a fear she couldn't understand. In that split second, Elena didn't know it, but Daniel had already begun doubting the one woman who would have given her life for him. She turned away, moving back toward the stove, not seeing the screen of his phone light up behind her, reflecting in the metal of the fridge for a brief second. She didn't see the name above the last unread message, Aubrey, and as Daniel lowered his hand slowly, a notification flashed on his phone. One message from a name Elena didn't recognize. A message Daniel once read in a work hallway 2 weeks earlier, the moment that started all of this. The pressure in Daniel's chest hit him like a punch. He sat at the bottom of the stairs now, Elena moving quietly in the kitchen, Mark and Theo talking in low voices in the living room. His phone buzzed on the hallway table with some new notification, but his eyes weren't on the new alert. They were stuck on an older message, pinned at the top of a thread he never should have opened in the first place. From Aubrey. "You need to see this. Come to the office hallway now." Just seeing those words again made his heart beat double. The scene cuts sharply, straight into a flashback. 2 weeks earlier, Daniel, 32, ambitious and proud, walked through the quiet hallway of his workplace. It was late, past business hours, the building dim and silent. He thought he was alone until Aubrey Hale, 29, beautiful in a sharp, polished way that always seemed intentional, stepped out from the shadows. Aubrey was not just a co-worker. She was the project manager on Daniel's team, known for her ambition and her ability to manipulate a room with a single sentence. She was the kind of woman who watched people's weaknesses like a hobby and used them like tools. She had been circling Daniel for months, studying him, learning him, noticing his worries when a promotion slipped by, the way he sighed when speaking about money, the fear in his voice when he talked about becoming a father to 3 at once. She saw her opening in his fear. Daniel remembered the moment she approached him. Her heels clicked once on the tiled floor. Then she leaned in a little too close. "Aubrey, I didn't want to tell you this, but I thought you deserved to know." He frowned, already uneasy. "What are you talking about?" Aubrey sighed, her voice soft, dripping with false sympathy. "Aubrey, someone told me they saw Elena with another man at the clinic, and I saw it myself today. Daniel, are you sure those babies are yours?" The question hit him like ice water. His childhood flashed through his mind. The nights he heard his father shouting, accusing his mother of things she never proved nor disproved. The memory of being a confused little boy at the top of the stairs, watching a family break in slow motion. That wound never healed. Aubrey knew that. She had listened closely every time Daniel accidentally revealed pieces of his past during after-hours talks. and she used it now. Daniel's breath grew tight. Elena would never, Aubrey cut him off. Aubrey, no woman is perfect. And beautiful women like her, they get attention. She tapped her phone and showed him a photo that froze his world. Elena standing outside the clinic, talking to a male doctor. The angle made their body language look intimate, too close, as if they were sharing a secret. He did not know this was the same specialist she'd been referred to for her high-risk triplet pregnancy, an appointment he had missed because he was working late on Aubrey's project. He did not know Aubrey paid the doctor's young intern to accidentally snap this exact picture. He only saw the image and the meaning Aubrey whispered into it. Daniel staggered back. This isn't what it looks like. Aubrey gave him a gentle, pitying smile. Aubrey, I hope so. I really do. But if those babies aren't yours, she's stealing your future. For a moment, Daniel couldn't breathe. Mark and Theo appeared then, stepping into the hallway. They had received a text from Aubrey minutes earlier, telling them to swing by before they left. They overheard just enough to join the conversation. Mark, always desperate for favor and money, spoke first. Man, that doesn't look good. Theo followed, lowering his voice with dramatic concern. You don't want a scandal, Daniel. If she's messing around, it will ruin you. Aubrey watched their faces, then added one more hook. Aubrey, I can help you know the truth. Quietly. No clinic, no lawyers, no drama. I have a friend in a lab. Next time you're in for routine blood work and screenings, we can compare things. You just have to let me arrange it. She didn't mention that the friend was really Mark's cousin, not a real lab contact. Daniel's fear, his old childhood wound, and the picture all tangled together. He nodded once, weakly. Fine, I need to know. Aubrey smiled inside. They knew Aubrey promised Mark and Theo promotions and connections if they backed her story. They knew they were lying, but they also knew Daniel was vulnerable, and they pushed. Back to the house, Daniel sat now at the bottom of the steps, elbows on his knees, staring at the picture on his phone. He replayed every suspicious memory, every late appointment, every time Elena seemed tired, every moment she didn't answer her phone fast enough. Pieces that didn't even belong to the same puzzle suddenly felt connected in his mind. Aubrey had planted the thought. Mark and Theo watered it, and his childhood pain made it grow into something toxic. His breathing became uneven, his hands sweaty. His thoughts twisted. He whispered to himself, what if they aren't mine? He didn't hear Elena walking toward him. He didn't see her reach out gently. He didn't feel her love or her fear. He only heard Aubrey's voice echoing in his head. If they aren't she's stealing your future. Daniel trembled, and upstairs, forgotten on the counter, Aubrey's next message appeared on his screen. I have more proof. You need to decide soon. He had no idea that proof would be the final lie that snapped something inside him. 2 weeks after Aubrey first planted the doubt, Daniel's voice slammed through the kitchen like a dropped plate. Why didn't you answer your phone earlier? He snapped, startling Elena so hard she almost dropped the glass she was holding. His tone was too loud, too sharp, too sudden. It hit her like a shockwave. The room froze. Her eyes widened, her breath caught in her chest. She stared at the man she loved, the father of her unborn children, unable to understand what she had done wrong. Her heart raced, not out of fear, but confusion. Deep, painful confusion. Then the scene softened. Daniel's shoulders slowly relaxed. He looked away, running a hand through his hair as if trying to calm a panic inside him. He'd barely slept since agreeing to Aubrey's help. He had let her talk him into signing a form she said was for an internal genetics program at work, a simple cheek swab, she'd called it. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself he was just being cautious. Now the weight of that decision pressed on him every second. Elena set the glass down carefully, gently, as if afraid the slightest sound would break him. I was folding laundry in the nursery, she said softly. I didn't hear it. Is everything okay? That question pierced him because she meant it. She still loved him. She still trusted him. She still believed he was the good man she married. But Daniel couldn't see her love anymore. He could only see the photo Aubrey showed him, The one where Elena stood too close to the male doctor. His stomach twisted. His head pulsed. His heart felt like it was being pulled in two directions. He walked past her without touching her, without meeting her eyes. That small action hit Elena harder than the shout. Daniel used to touch her without thinking, curl his fingers around her wrist, place a hand on her back, brush her hair behind her ear. But now every time she came near him, he moved away like she carried something dangerous. Elena followed him carefully to the living room, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling with gentle worry. "Did something happen at work?" He stopped, turned halfway, hesitated. Then his eyes drifted, almost reluctantly, to her belly, to the curve that held the three lives forming inside her, and he froze. The fear Aubrey planted was now a shadow behind every breath he took. "Are you sure," he asked slowly, "that we don't need to take another test? You know, just to be safe?" Elena felt the words like a physical blow. She placed her hand over her chest, her fingers curling as though trying to hold herself together. What do you mean another test? Daniel, the doctor already—" He cut in, voice quiet but shaking. "I just think it would help both of us. Both of us." But they both knew he meant himself. Elena sat down, gripping the edge of the sofa to ground herself, her heart clenched with confusion and deep pain. Her mind raced through every moment of their marriage, searching desperately for the point where she might have made him doubt her. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I have only loved you. Only you." The sincerity in her voice should have reached him, should have softened him, should have reminded him of the truth. But Aubrey's poison was already in his bloodstream. He paced the room, unable to be still. He picked up a picture frame, one from their wedding day, and stared at it with a strange mix of longing and suspicion. The way he held it, as if he wasn't sure if the memory was real. Elena swallowed hard. A small flashback broke through her fear. 2 years ago, during a quiet evening on her couch, Elena sat with her best friend Mia, 27, bold, honest, the type of friend who noticed everything and sugar-coated nothing. Elena had confessed how Daniel made her feel safe, wanted and protected. "He doesn't care that I'm simple," she had said, smiling shyly. "He loves me for who I am." Mia's expression had softened, but her voice carried warning. "Love is beautiful, Elena, but don't let it blind you to danger. Even good men can change under pressure. Promise me you'll always have a plan for yourself." Back then, Elena had simply nodded, not really understanding. She never told Mia about the inheritance, but Mia still reminded her to protect her heart. Elena didn't understand the warning then, but she understood it now. The flashback faded as Daniel stumbled past her again, avoiding her hand when she reached for him. She pulled her hand back slowly, as if burned. "Daniel," she said in a trembling whisper, "please talk to me. What changed?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know how to answer, because the lies felt more real than the truth, because fear was louder than love. Then, his phone buzzed, hard, loud, urgent. Daniel glanced at the screen, his face drained of color. The message was from Aubrey. "It's time. I have the final proof." His hand shook, his breath caught, and Elena, watching his reaction, felt her heart begin to crack. Not far away, Aubrey smiled at her phone, already preparing the trap that would push Daniel past the point of no return, a trap built on the test he had already agreed to. Daniel burst into the dim parking lot behind his workplace so fast he almost slipped on the concrete. His breath was wild, uneven, as if he had sprinted from something chasing him. In reality, he was running towards something, toward the final proof Aubrey promised. He couldn't think about Elena's confused face or her trembling voice. His mind was consumed by a terror that refused logic. Aubrey was already waiting by the back entrance, holding a slim folder against her chest like a weapon. Her expression was calm, too calm for the storm she was about to unleash. Mark and Theo stood behind her, both acting nervous, though for very different reasons. Mark needed money, Theo needed protection, both needed Aubrey's influence, but Daniel only saw the folder. The moment he reached her, Aubrey didn't speak. She simply extended the folder slowly, like she was handing him a verdict. "Daniel," she whispered, "I'm so sorry." He snatched it before she could say more. He opened it, and the world dropped out from beneath him. The first thing he saw was a formatted lab result, clean, official-looking, printed on the kind of paper he had seen at medical offices. At the top it read, "Paternity test result, excluded, excluded, not the father." His eyes darted over the numbers, the phrases, the highlighted section. Probability of paternity, 0%. His vision blurred. His chest tightened. His throat closed. He felt sick. A roaring filled his ears, drowning out everything else. The cars passing, the night wind, even Aubrey's breathing. His fingers shook so badly the paper made tiny sounds. Mark stepped forward, pretending shock. "Oh man, Daniel, I don't know what to say." Theo placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, voice low and heavy. This is serious. You need to protect yourself." Daniel barely heard them. His mind raced back to the moment a week earlier when Aubrey had pressed a cotton swab into his hand in the break room. "Company's doing free genetic screening for employees and babies," she'd said lightly. "It'll help the doctor's plan. I can run yours through a friend's lab along with Elena's routine blood work. Totally confidential." He had signed the simple consent form she offered without reading closely, believing it would all go through official channels. Now looking at the paper in his hand, he believed this result came from that friend and that lab. All he could see were the printed words that stole the ground from under his life. Excluded. Not the father. His babies, his triplets, weren't his. His future wasn't his. His home wasn't his. Elena wasn't his. The thought struck like lightning, and the thunder that followed came from his past, crashing violently through his chest. He was 6 years old again, sitting at the top of the stairs, hugging his knees as his father screamed, "Those kids aren't mine! You tricked me!" He remembered his mother's sobs, soft, broken, and tired. He remembered the slam of the front door. He remembered waiting for a father who never returned. He remembered promising himself at age 6, "I will never live through this again." And yet, here he was, history repeating. Aubrey stepped closer, her voice soft and poisonous. "Daniel, Elena is doing to you what your father said your mother did to him." His breath seized, his mind snapped, his heart tore itself apart. No, no, no. Elena would never, but the photo, the distance, the tired excuses, and now this official result. Aubrey watched his expression crumble, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction behind false sympathy. "Daniel," she whispered, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, "you deserve honesty. You deserve loyalty. You deserve someone who won't lie to your face." Mark nodded quickly. "Yeah, you can't raise kids that aren't yours." Theo sighed dramatically. "And if this becomes public, it could ruin your career." Daniel's hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. He felt something inside him snap completely. Not a gentle break, but a violent tearing of trust, love, and every memory he shared with Elena. He saw her differently now. Not as the woman who devoted herself to him, but as someone capable of the same betrayal that destroyed his childhood. Aubrey lowered her voice to a final whisper. "You need to confront her, tonight." His heartbeat slammed against his ribs. He grabbed the papers with shaking hands, turned sharply, and walked away from them, each step heavier, harder, angrier. Aubrey smiled behind him, the kind of smile that came from getting exactly what she wanted. Daniel drove like a man possessed, gripping the wheel so tightly his hands ached. His breath shook, his eyes burned. Every turn felt like the world pushing him closer to something he didn't want to face but couldn't avoid. Elena, her belly, her soft voice, her trust, the lies he believed she carried. A storm brewed both outside the car windows and inside his soul. Clouds rolled across the sky, thick and heavy. He didn't slow down. He didn't think. He didn't breathe properly. He only saw one thing in his hands, the papers that claimed his life was a lie. He would confront her. He would demand answers. He would tear down whatever truth she hid. His world had collapsed, and now hers was about to. He slammed the car door when he arrived home. He stepped into the night air, shaking with rage. He clutched the papers like a verdict. Then he stormed toward the front door, As he reached for the doorknob, a single drop of rain struck the paper, the first warning of the storm that would change everything. Daniel slammed the front door so hard the entire house trembled. The sound cracked through the rooms like thunder. Elena, who had been wiping down the counter, jumped violently, dropping the cloth. Her heart jumped into her throat. She had never seen him enter a room with such force, not even on his worst days. His steps were fast, sharp, heavy, not the steps of a husband coming home, the steps of a man ready to explode. "Elena!" he shouted, his voice shaking with fury. She froze. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, as if shielding their unborn children from the sound. She turned slowly, her face pale, her eyes soft and frightened. "Daniel, what's wrong?" He held up the papers, those fake paternity results, with a trembling hand. "Don't you dare ask me that!" She stared at the papers, confused. "What is that?" Daniel didn't answer her question. He threw the papers onto the counter. The pages scattered like broken pieces of their life. "You lied to me," he hissed. Elena blinked, trying to understand. "I lied? Daniel, what are you talking about?" His chest rose and fell in wild, angry breaths. "Don't act innocent. I know everything now." She swallowed hard. "Everything? Like what?" The pause before he spoke was heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then he shouted so loud she flinched. "You think I'll raise another man's kids?" The words sliced through her like a blade. Her knees went weak. Her breath shook. Her hands trembled over her stomach. The same words his father once screamed. The same words Daniel swore he'd never say to anyone. Now came out of his own mouth like poison. Elena's voice broke. "Daniel, no, no. These are your babies. All three. I've never—" "Stop lying," he roared, moving closer. She backed away out of instinct, pressing her hand against the counter for balance. Her eyes filled with tears she fought desperately to hold back. "I would never betray you," she whispered. "Never." But Daniel couldn't hear her love through the noise of his fear. Aubrey's lies had filled every corner of his mind, smothering reason. He reached for her suitcase, the small one she kept by the door for hospital visits, and yanked it open. He grabbed clothes from the hallway cabinet, shoving them inside with shaking, angry hands. Elena stared in horror. "Daniel, please, stop. Talk to me." Her voice cracked painfully. "If you think something is wrong, we can go back to the doctor. We can check together." He didn't stop. "Get out," he said coldly, not shouting, not trembling, cold. "Daniel," he grabbed her arm, not hard enough to injure her, but firm enough to make her understand he had made up his mind. "Get out of my house. His house, not their home." Her heart shuddered as he dragged the suitcase to the door. She followed slowly, clutching her belly, tears streaming down her face but not loud enough to change anything. She shook all over, fear, heartbreak, and betrayal mixing in her chest like fire. "Daniel," she whispered again, "these are your babies. You know me. You know who I am. Please." But when she reached out for him, he stepped back as if she were something dangerous. He opened the door. Cold wind rushed in. And then, as if the sky itself responded to the destruction inside their home, the clouds cracked open. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, hammering the porch. Daniel shoved the suitcase outside. It smacked against the wet wood. Elena stared at him, her soaked tears mixing with the sorrow in her eyes. Her voice came out tiny. "Please don't do this." He looked at her with so much pain twisted into anger that he didn't look like the man she married anymore. "Leave," he said. Then he pushed her out. Not violently, not with the intent to make her fall, but with enough pressure to send her stumbling into the cold rain on an already unstable body. She gasped as the shock of the freezing water hit her skin. Her clothes drenched instantly, her hair plastered to her face. Every breath became harder and harder, and sharp pain pulled at her lower belly. "Daniel!" she cried. "Please, my stomach! Daniel!" But he shut the door. The lock clicked. She stood alone on the porch, shaking with fear and rain. Her arms wrapped around her belly. Her breath turned shallow. Her legs weakened. She took one step toward her suitcase and collapsed onto her knees. The cold water splashed around her, mixing with the tears she no longer had strength to hide. She clutched her stomach, terrified for her babies. Across the street, a neighbor, Mrs. Lorne, an older woman known for watching everything, pulled her blinds slowly, eyes widening at the sight. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, shocked. Then she reached for her phone with trembling hands. Inside the house, Daniel paced with the curtains closed, refusing to look outside. On the porch, Elena's phone lay beside her in the puddle, vibrating. The name Mia flashed on the screen. Her best friend calling, her lifeline, her hope. But Elena couldn't reach it. Her hand trembled, struggling. Her vision blurred. Her breath hitched. And then, everything faded into darkness. As Elena went still in the rain, Mrs. Lorne's voice shook as she spoke to the emergency operator. And far away, Mia frowned at the unanswered call, whispering, "Something's wrong. Elena never ignores me at this hour." Elena jolted awake with a scream stuck in her throat. The hospital lights above her were too bright, slicing into her eyes. Her body shook from shock, her breath shallow, her heart slamming against her ribs. The cold memory of rain clinging to her skin still felt real. She could almost hear it pouring over her, drowning her cries on the porch. "Elena! Elena! Breathe! I'm here!" Mia's voice cut through the panic like warm light. Mia, 27, bold, fiercely loyal. The one person who never hesitated to protect her, held her hand tightly. Her clothing was still damp from rushing through the storm, her hair frizzed from rain. Her eyes were swollen with fear and anger. Elena's voice came out as a whisper. "Mia, the babies, are they—" Before she could finish, a doctor stepped inside the room. Dr. Hayes, gentle, calm, middle-aged, gave a reassuring smile. He was the same high-risk specialist who had been monitoring her triplet pregnancy since the second trimester. "They're safe," he said softly. "All 3 heartbeats are strong. You had a collapse from stress and exposure, but we stabilized you and the babies." Elena broke. Her face folded into tears, not from physical pain, but from the emotional wreckage left behind. She pressed both hands over her face, her body trembling as silent sobs escaped her. Mia wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, sweetheart. I got a call from Mrs. Lorne. She said she saw you fall on the porch and called an ambulance. I got here as fast as I could. He did this to you. He actually—" Her voice cracked with rage. Elena shook her head, burying her crying into her hands. No woman should be thrown out like that, especially with his babies in her stomach. Her words were broken but true. Dr. Hayes finished checking the monitors and said softly, "You need emotional safety as much as physical safety. Stress is dangerous for the pregnancy. I recommend rest, support, and distance from whatever caused this episode." Mia's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what whatever meant. Dr. Hayes added, "We'll keep you overnight for observation. We've already documented the circumstances in your medical notes, based on what the paramedics and your neighbor reported." Then he left them alone. The room fell quiet. Elena wiped her tears slowly, staring at her reflection in the small metal panel near the bed. Her face was pale, streaked with dried rain and heartbreak. She barely recognized herself, but the pain wasn't the deepest thing in her eyes anymore. Something else had awoken, and suddenly a memory rose, bright and sharp, like a voice from the past. She was 19 again, sitting on the porch of her grandfather's estate. Henry Aldridge, strict, wise, protective, rested beside her with a cup of tea, speaking in his steady, comforting tone. "My child," he said, placing a hand over hers, "you have a heart that loves deeply, but even the softest heart must know when to stop." Elena looked up, confused. "Stop loving?" He nodded. "You will know when someone stops deserving your forgiveness, and when that day comes, protect yourself. No one else will." She had never forgotten those words, just buried them under hope. Now, lying in a hospital bed, the memory felt like a message sent exactly for this night. Elena lowered her hands. Her tears stopped. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes hardened, not with cruelty, but clarity. "It's time," she whispered. Mia leaned in. "Time for what?" "Time to stop loving someone who destroyed me." The shift in her voice made Mia straighten. Then another figure entered the room quietly. An older man in a gray suit, neatly trimmed beard, carrying a leather briefcase. His presence filled the room with calm authority. "Elena," he greeted warmly, I came as soon as I heard. This was Arthur Lennox, her grandfather's lifelong legal advisor, and the lawyer who had handled every Aldrich family matter for decades. Henry had given Elena his card years ago, telling her, "If you are ever in real danger, call Arthur." After the ambulance call, Mrs. Lorne had found the card in Elena's handbag and handed it to Mia. Mia called him the moment she realized what happened. "Arthur," her voice cracked, "I need help." He placed the briefcase on the table and sat beside her bed. "Tell me everything," he said gently, and she did. She told him about the photo, the strange distance, the accusations, the shouting, the fear. The moment Daniel pushed her out into the storm, Mia added what she had seen with her own eyes on the porch when she arrived. Arthur listened without interruption, his eyes darkening with each fact. When Elena finished, Arthur exhaled slowly. "Elena," he said, voice steady and strong, "this ends now." He opened his briefcase. Inside was a thick folder sealed with a gold emblem, the Aldrich family crest. Elena recognized it immediately. It matched the crest on the letter under her nursery floorboards. Mia's eyes widened. "What is that?" Arthur placed the folder gently on Elena's lap. "This," he said, "is your true protection and the key to your justice." Elena touched the cover with trembling fingers. She had been running from this part of herself, pretending she was ordinary. Arthur met her eyes, firm and unyielding. "Your grandfather instructed me to activate this only when you said the words, 'I need help.' You just did. Then let's show them," he said, "who you really are." He flipped open the folder. The title on the first page read, "Inheritance Activation." Elena inhaled sharply. Her life was about to change. Forever. As Arthur turned the page, a second folder beneath it slid into view, one stamped with 3 words that would shake Daniel's world. "Legal action prepared." Elena's strength returned like a sudden flame. The scene opened with papers slamming onto a glass table, the sound echoing sharply through Arthur Lennox's private meeting room. Mia let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding as Elena sat upright, her posture no longer fragile, but focused, determined, changed. It had been 10 days since the night of the storm. 10 days of hospital monitoring, legal calls, and quiet planning. Elena had been discharged on strict rest orders, but with Arthur and Mia handling most of the movement, she could still direct every step. Arthur opened the legal action prepared folder, revealing a list of steps that looked like a silent war plan. "We start now," he said, "before Daniel realizes how much trouble he's in." The intensity faded into a steady, calculated calm. This was not revenge born from anger anymore. This was justice, built with purpose. Their first step took them, by appointment, and with Elena sitting carefully on the sofa, to Mrs. Lorne's small living room. Mia insisted on driving and supporting Elena each time she stood. The older woman, gray hair in a bun, glasses trembling on her nose, met them at the door with guilt in her eyes. "I should have helped you that night," she whispered, voice cracking. "I froze. I only thought to call the ambulance after I saw you fall. Elena touched her hand softly. "You saved me by making that call. That was enough." Mrs. Lorne nodded, wiping her tears before leading them to her laptop. She clicked a file. The video played, rain pouring. Elena stumbling. Daniel shoving the suitcase out into the storm. Elena collapsing to her knees. The moment was silent but powerful, proof that required no explanation. Mia clasped a hand over her mouth. Arthur exhaled slowly. Elena closed her eyes, letting the truth hurt her one last time before she turned it into strength. "We'll need a copy," Arthur said gently. Mrs. Lorne nodded and handed him a flash drive. "Take it, and if you need me in court, I'll testify. I should have done more. Let me do it now." Next they returned, this time with a wheelchair for Elena, to the hospital where Dr. Hayes provided a printed report. "Physical shock, emotional distress, and risk to a high-risk triplet pregnancy," he read aloud. "Cause, emotional incident and exposure during heavy rainfall, as documented by paramedics and neighbor report." Elena felt the weight of the words, but this time she didn't cry. "This will help protect you and the babies," Arthur assured her, "and it proves Daniel's actions had real medical consequences." Mia, who handled all Elena's appointments and often attended them with her, had already gathered everything needed. timeline of conception, ultrasound confirmations, Daniel's presence during early visits, notes with his signature acknowledging appointment results. Arthur recorded each document carefully. "This destroys any claim of infidelity," he said, "but I want something even stronger, something that leaves no room for doubt in any court." On Arthur's recommendation, Elena agreed to a court-ordered, licensed paternity test. Done correctly this time, Daniel was officially notified. Under pressure from Arthur's initial filings and the risk of looking uncooperative, he complied. A neutral clinic collected samples from Elena and Daniel. The process was fully documented, with proper chain of custody. No Aubrey, no cousins, no back doors. A week later, the results arrived at Arthur's office. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Legally unquestionable, Arthur said. This will crush any false narrative about those babies not being his. Now came the part that would turn lies into evidence. Arthur drafted subpoenas to pull communications between Aubrey, Mark, Theo, Daniel, and anyone associated with the fake test. Once this is filed, they cannot hide messages, Arthur said. Screenshots, calls, deleted texts. They're all recoverable, at least in part, especially where they backed things up or used company devices. Elena's fingers tightened around the armrest. "I want the truth seen." "You'll have it," Arthur promised. Arthur introduced them to Caleb Ward, a quiet man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a mind built for details. He used to work cybercrime before becoming a private investigator. Caleb spread his equipment on the table. "There's something off about that lab test you showed me," he said. "I'll confirm its origin." Days later, he returned with his report. "The test never came from a licensed lab," Caleb said. "It was formatted by someone untrained. The ID numbers don't match any system. Metadata on the file shows it was created on a home computer belonging to Mark's cousin." Elena inhaled slowly. "Who created it?" Arthur asked, though he already suspected. Caleb placed a photo on the table. Mark's cousin, paid under the table. A clean, undeniable link. The next breakthrough came faster than expected. When Theo Briggs arrived at Arthur's office under subpoena threat, he crumbled like wet paper. Fear controlled him more than loyalty ever could. He confessed everything. Aubrey staged the photo of Elena and the doctor. She bribed the doctor's intern. She paid Mark's cousin to forge the lab test. Mark pressured Daniel constantly, reminding him of his father's history. Aubrey manipulated Daniel's deepest fear and promised favors in return. Theo wiped sweat off his forehead as he whispered, "She said if we helped her make Daniel believe the babies weren't his, she'd help us get promotions. It got out of control. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry." His testimony was typed, recorded, signed, and filed. Proof. Truth. Justice building brick by brick. Now Arthur was ready. He pushed a new document across the table, the one that would hit Daniel first before any full lawsuit or final divorce petition. Based on the fake test, the eviction video, the medical harm, and the paternity confirmation, he said, the court approved our request. Elena leaned closer. Mia held her breath. Arthur's voice was calm but sharp. The judge signed a temporary order freezing half of Daniel's assets until all proceedings are complete, and he granted you temporary exclusive occupancy of the marital home. Elena didn't smirk. She didn't celebrate. She simply nodded, accepting the first step of justice. At that same moment, across town, Daniel opened an envelope marked with the court seal. His eyes moved over the words. His face drained of color. His hands shook violently. Asset freeze order. Exclusive occupancy order in favor of Mrs. Elena Carter. His voice cracked. What did she do?" He stumbled backward, clutching the table as panic flooded him. The consequences had begun. And while Daniel fell apart, Aubrey checked her messages, only to realize the court wanted her next. The courtroom exploded the moment Daniel walked in. People whispered. Heads turned. The tension crackled like electricity. The hearing had been covered already in local news, and now observers filled the benches. The co-workers who once admired him, neighbors who heard rumors, even strangers who somehow got wind of the scandal. The air felt tight with judgment. Daniel's breath shook as he stepped forward. His hair was messy, his tie crooked, his eyes heavy with days of sleepless panic and weeks of investigation. Every step felt heavier than the last. Aubrey sat on the opposite side, legs crossed, chin lifted, wearing a confident smirk. She dressed like she was attending a celebration, not a legal battle. Her eyes sparkled with fake calm until she noticed Elena walking in behind her lawyer. Elena appeared quietly, gracefully. She wore a simple dress that flowed gently around her pregnant belly. No flashy jewelry, just dignity. Her expression was calm, almost serene. The strength she carried now came not from revenge, but from truth. Mia walked beside her, protective, alert. Arthur followed, carrying a thick binder of documents that could crush reputations in seconds. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The tension snapped like a rubber band pulled too tightly. Court is now in session. Elena took her seat calmly. Daniel sank into his chair like he wished the floor would swallow him. Aubrey sat straighter, pretending she wasn't afraid. Arthur rose with controlled confidence. Your Honor, we will present evidence demonstrating manipulation, fraud, and emotional harm against my client, Mrs. Elena Carter, as well as clear proof of paternity. Aubrey shifted in her seat, frown tightening. The judge nodded. Proceed? Arthur placed the first document on the screen. This document, Arthur said, was presented to Mr. Daniel Carter as legitimate paternity testing. It is not. A few gasps rose. Arthur continued. The ID numbers do not belong to any testing facility. Signatures are forged, and the formatting was created on a personal computer. He turned to the judge. We have the confession of the man who made it. Mark's cousin stood up reluctantly from the back row, raising his hand weakly. I did it, he said. A woman named Aubrey paid me. She sent me an online template and told me what to type. All eyes snapped toward Aubrey. Her face drained slightly, but she kept her chin high. Arthur placed the photo of Elena and the doctor on the screen. This image was used to manipulate Mr. Carter into believing infidelity occurred, he said. He tapped the corner of the image. Your Honor, this intern was paid to capture this moment and make it appear intimate. A young man from the clinic stepped forward, shame on his face. Aubrey paid me to take that picture, he said. She told me exactly where to stand and when to take it. Nothing happened between them. The doctor just explained her high-risk pregnancy. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief. Aubrey's confident posture cracked. Arthur showed bank transfers. Aubrey sending money to Mark, to the intern, and to Mark's cousin. Then Theo's voice played through the speakers, a recorded confession, obtained with his consent. She told us to help her make Daniel believe the babies weren't his. She said she wanted him. She promised us favors if we backed her story. I'm ashamed of what I did. The entire courtroom erupted. Daniel bent forward as if the wind had been knocked out of him. Aubrey's lips trembled. She opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Arthur let the neighbor's video play. Silence. Then the screen filled with rain, Elena collapsing, and Daniel shutting the door on her. People gasped. One woman covered her mouth. A man shook his head in disgust. Daniel's knees gave way slightly. He clutched the table. His voice broke, barely audible. I didn't know. But the truth was out. Arthur placed one more document on the evidence screen. This one, he said, is a certified paternity test from an accredited laboratory ordered by this court. Samples were taken from both parents under supervision. He read the key line out loud. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. The babies are biologically Mr. Carter's, Arthur said. There was never any doubt, except the one manufactured by Miss Aubrey Hale for her own gain. The judge looked at Elena for a long moment. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, please stand. Elena stood, calm, steady, holding her belly protectively. Based on medical records, conception dates, ultrasound confirmations, and genetic markers, these children are biologically yours and Mr. Carter's. The court declares the babies 100% his. A wave of murmurs filled the room. Daniel closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his face. He whispered, "What have I done?" But the judge wasn't finished. He lifted another paper. And due to the proven acts of abandonment, emotional distress, endangerment of a high-risk pregnancy, and destruction of marital trust, he paused. Aubrey froze. Daniel's breathing stopped. The courtroom leaned forward. The judge spoke clearly. Temporary full custody is awarded to Mrs. Carter, pending final proceedings. Mr. Carter's contact will be supervised and only upon medical clearance after birth. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Daniel's legs buckled. Aubrey's hand flew to her mouth. Mia grinned with fierce pride. Elena stood still, quiet, dignified, strong. As the judge gathered his papers, he added one more line quietly. Mrs. Carter, the court will now consider financial penalties and possible criminal charges against the involved parties. The destruction of Daniel Carter began before sunrise. His phone exploded with notifications the moment he opened his eyes. So loud, so constant, it felt like the world itself was screaming at him. Emails, texts, missed calls, news alerts, social media tags. He sat up fast, heart thundering, sweat on his neck. The first message on his screen was from HR. You are required to attend an emergency meeting at 9 a.m. Mandatory. You remain on unpaid suspension until further notice. The second was worse. A link to a public article titled, Man Throws Pregnant Wife Out in Rain. Court awards custody to mother. His stomach dropped. He clicked the link and saw the neighbor's video everywhere. Shared, reposted, commented on by thousands of strangers. People called him every name imaginable. Memes were made. His face was turned into jokes. His voice was analyzed. His cruelty was viral. His world was collapsing in front of him, fast, brutal, merciless. At the company conference room, no one looked him in the eye. His boss sat stiffly, jaw clenched. A folder lay on the table marked termination. Daniel, his boss said coldly, your behavior has brought shame to this company. The board reviewed the court footage and the press coverage last night. Daniel tried to speak. I was misled, his boss cut him off. You put your hands on a pregnant woman and threw her outside. There are videos. There is court documentation, and there is public outrage. We cannot keep you on as a face of this company, not even in the background. The words hit him like physical blows. Mark and Theo sat on the opposite side of the room, but they refused to meet his eyes. They had already given their statements to protect themselves. When Daniel stood up, Theo slid his chair away. Mark looked down at the floor. They wanted distance. They wanted safety. They wanted out. After everything I did for you two, Daniel whispered. Mark swallowed. We can't be involved. We have families. Theo nodded quickly. We're sorry, man. But their eyes said something else. You're poisonous now. Daniel left the building under stares and whispers. He drove straight to Aubrey's apartment, rage boiling inside him. She had destroyed his marriage, his job, his reputation. Yet she had promised she loved him, promised she wanted him, promised she would stand by him no matter what. He pounded the door. Aubrey, open up! A neighbor peeked through a cracked door, whispering, Oh, he doesn't know, does he? Know what? Daniel snapped, but the neighbor only shut the door again. Before he could pound again, his phone buzzed. A social media notification. Aubrey had posted a photo, her kissing another man. Caption, Finally with someone who deserves me. Daniel staggered back like he had been slapped. His vision blurred. His chest tightened. His mouth fell open, but no sound came. He called her. She declined. He texted. No response. What he didn't know was that she was also answering calls from investigators now, her perfect life beginning to crack from the legal consequences. Aubrey had not just abandoned him, she humiliated him publicly. He sank onto the hallway floor, staring at the picture until it burned into his memory. By afternoon, everyone knew his name, his face, his story. Teenagers made jokes on social media. Parents called him a danger to women. Forums tore apart his actions. People online mocked him for falling for an obvious trap. His life was no longer private. His mistakes were entertainment. And every time he refreshed his phone, it grew worse. Some posts didn't just attack his character. They tagged his former company, his old college, charities he once volunteered for. Doors quietly shut before he could even knock. When he returned to the house at dusk, exhaustion weighing on every muscle, he noticed something wrong immediately. A legal notice taped to the front door. He read it with shaking hands. This property is subject to an exclusive occupancy order in favor of Mrs. Elena Carter. Mr. Daniel Carter is prohibited from entering without court permission. Title division pending. His breath caught. What? He whispered. This is my house. He looked around and saw moving trucks pulling away. Under Arthur's guidance, Elena had already arranged to move her belongings and the baby's things in, now that the court had given her control of the home until final division. He stumbled into the driveway, numb. Then he saw her, Elena. She stepped out of a black car at the end of the street, her belly prominent, her steps slow but steady. Mia stayed by her side, guiding her carefully. Arthur followed behind them, holding documents and keys. Elena looked different now, not broken, not wounded, not the woman he threw away. She looked whole, composed, powerful, a woman who had found her strength. Daniel's breath shuddered. He moved toward her, desperate. Elena, please, he whispered. I didn't know. I messed up. I was lied to. I believed them. Can we talk? I need you to. But Elena did not stop. She did not slow down. She did not even glance in his direction. She walked past him like he was a stranger on the sidewalk. As she passed, Mia met Daniel's eyes with a glare that could shatter stone. Arthur didn't look at him at all. He simply unlocked the front door and held it open for Elena. Daniel stood frozen in the empty driveway. His home gone, his family gone, his dignity gone. And Elena kept walking, heading inside her house. Just before the door closed behind her, Elena paused, as if preparing for one final quiet strike that Daniel would never see coming, the one that wouldn't just remove her from his life, but erase his power over her future completely. Elena jolts awake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, breath sharp, her hand flying instinctively to her belly. For a second, her mind flashes back to the rain, to the cold ground, to Daniel's voice echoing like a storm. But then, a soft sound breaks the memory, a tiny whimper. One of the triplets stirs in her crib. Elena exhales, shoulders lowering as reality gently settles back around her. She is not outside. She is not in danger. She is home, her home. It has been several weeks since the court hearing and the emergency early delivery. The triplets, born a bit early as Dr. Hayes had warned, spent time in the neonatal unit. Now they are finally home, their little bodies stronger every day. The nursery glows with warm night lights, painted in soft pastels, the same colors she originally wanted, but never had the courage to request. Now everything is exactly how she dreamed. 3 tiny cribs arranged in a neat row, handmade blankets, a rocking chair beside the window. Peace lives in this room. The next morning sunlight pours in, bright and clean. Elena walks through her renovated living room. The air smells of fresh paint and lavender. Wooden floors shine. Everything is calm, organized, safe. Nothing like the hostile environment she once lived in. Daniel's things are gone, removed under court supervision. The house is no longer a battleground of memories. It's a sanctuary. Mia enters from the kitchen, holding 2 cups of warm tea. Still feels strange, huh? She asks. Elena smiles softly. Strange, but good. Mia sits beside her. She's been Elena's anchor, a steady force through chaos. The exhaustion in her eyes is softened by pride. You built all this, Mia says, gesturing around the home. Piece by piece, you chose the colors. You chose what stayed. You chose what left, including him. Elena looks down at her hands. For months, these hands trembled from stress and fear. Now they feel steady, capable, hers again. At noon, Arthur, the lawyer and longtime friend of her grandfather, arrives with lunch. He sets the bags on the table and nods at Elena with warm approval. You handled the courtroom with grace, he says. Your grandfather would have been pleased. Elena's throat tightens. He taught me everything. Arthur sits, folding his hands. You know, he always said you were stronger than you believed. When I activated your inheritance file, I realized he had planned every step to make sure you would never be trapped. Mia nods. You proved him right. For the first time in months, Elena laughs. A real one. It feels like sunshine. After they finish eating, Elena excuses herself and enters her bedroom. She opens the drawer and takes out the old envelope, her inheritance letter. The same letter she once hid under floorboards, terrified of what it meant. Now it lies in her hands like an old friend. She opens it gently. My dear Elena, wealth is not for showing. It is for protecting. The world may not always treat you kindly, but you must treat yourself kindly. Use this when the moment arrives, not to rise above others, but to rise back to yourself. Her grandfather's handwriting is shaky near the end, a reminder of his final days. Elena brushes her fingers across the ink. A single tear slips down her cheek. Not from sorrow, not from fear, but from release. For years, she carried his words like a secret lockbox. Now she understands them. She didn't use her inheritance to destroy Daniel. She used it to protect her children and rebuild her life, to pay for legal fees without fear, to secure the house, to set up a fund in the triplets' names. Her voice is a whisper in the quiet room. I didn't ruin him. His choices did that. She returns to the nursery. All three babies sleep peacefully, tiny chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Elena picks up the smallest girl and sits in the rocking chair. The early evening sun paints the room gold. She hums a soft tune her grandfather used to sing, the same one she once thought she'd forgotten. Mia stands at the doorway, arms crossed, smiling quietly. Arthur joins her. She looks like someone who finally stepped into her own life, he murmurs. Mia nods. She did, and she'll teach those three that love should never require you to erase yourself. Elena kisses her daughter's forehead and closes her eyes for a moment, listening to the gentle breathing of all three babies, feeling the solid floor beneath her bare feet, the safe walls around them. This is what safety feels like. This is what freedom feels like. Some storms come to break you. Others come to clear your path. Elena learned that love without respect is a prison, that silence can be strength when used wisely, that betrayal doesn't define a person, but survival does, and that sometimes the greatest revenge is peace. As the babies sleep and Elena rocks gently, her world feels whole, rebuilt, renewed, unbroken. The camera moves to the window. A new sunrise glows on the horizon, brighter than any before. Elena closes her eyes, holding her daughter close, whispering, "Thank you, Grandpa. We're safe now." The screen fades to soft light, but just before it turns black, far away someone knocks at a door that hasn't been opened in years, as if a new chapter is waiting. The end. The kettle hissed as Lucas Graves tightened the knot of his navy suit. The scent of his cologne hit the air, and his wheels whispered across the floor. "Business trip," he said, brushing a crumb from his tie with that smile, ready, perfect in photos, empty in real life. Eleanor stood by the counter, wiping last night's dishes, heart tight, eyes on their 4-year-old son, still clutching a pink lollipop. "When will you be back, Daddy?" the boy asked. Lucas's hand paused, mid-motion, then landed on the doorknob. "Soon," he lied. The door clicked shut, and the quiet felt wrong before a storm hits. Hours later, Eleanor tried calling straight to voicemail. Days passed, no word, no message, no money. She searched, begged, reported nothing. The world whispered the words she didn't want to believe. He left them. 15 years later, when a cream-colored wedding invitation arrived in her mailbox bearing his name and another woman's, she didn't cry. She only whispered, "He left his wife and son to die, and now he wants me at his wedding?" The guests at that wedding would never forget what happened when she walked in. This is the story of how a husband left his wife and son to die. 15 years later, he invited her to his wedding, and when she arrived, the crowd froze. But what made the entire crowd freeze that day? Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, please click subscribe. Every single click helps us tell stories of courage and truth. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Because when we share these stories together, we remind each other that even in pain, we can rise. The kettle hissed loud enough to drown out the cartoons sang on the TV, but not loud enough to cover the sound of wheels of his suitcase whispering across the floor. The smell of cologne hit the air sharp, new, expensive. Lucas Graves stood in the doorway, navy suit, shiny shoes, and that smile ready that always looked perfect in pictures but never reached his eyes. "Business trip?" he said, voice smooth, as he brushed a crumb from his tie. Eleanor Graves, 28, stood by the counter wiping last night's dishes, hands shaking slightly. Her brown hair was pinned up in a messy knot. She wore an old t-shirt splattered with pancake batter. Their son, Noah, 4 years old, sat cross-legged on the floor, holding a pink lollipop like treasure. "Will you be gone long, Daddy?" Noah asked. Lucas smiled, that gap in his front teeth flashing as he bent down to pat the boy's shoulder. "Just a few days, champ. Be good for Mommy." He didn't look at Eleanor when he said it. Her throat tightened. "Lucas, rent's due. The car payment. I already handled it," he interrupted. His tone clipped. But he hadn't. She knew it. The quiet felt wrong before a storm hits. The door clicked shut, and with it, warmth left the house. For a moment, Eleanor just stood there. The ceiling fan creaked overhead, blowing a faint chill across the cool floor under her bare feet. The hum of the fridge filled the silence, steady but empty. Hours passed. The pancakes grew cold. The phone never rang. She tried calling him once, twice, 5 times each time, straight to voicemail. By nightfall, Noah sat by the window, his small hands pressed to the glass. "Mommy, when will Daddy come back from his business trip?" Eleanor forced a smile, her heart cracking like thin glass. "Soon, baby. He'll come back soon." She waited until Noah fell asleep, then walked to the bedroom. His duffel bag was gone. The dent in his pillow still smelled like him, but the drawer was empty, his shirts missing. She found a chipped mug on the dresser, his favorite one. He'd left that behind, maybe on purpose. Maybe as proof he was once here. Her phone buzzed suddenly. Hope surged. She snatched it up, unknown number. A message appeared. "Don't contact him again." Eleanor's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, tears streaking her face. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The pipes whispered too, like the house was trying to answer her. She called her father-in-law, Patrick Moore, hoping for clarity. He sighed, long and tired. "Men need space, Eleanor. Don't make it worse. Be more supportive." The words cut like glass. "He's your son, Patrick. He left us." Patrick's voice went cold. Maybe he had his reasons. Then the line went dead. Outside, the gray sky hung heavy, a lid on the whole town. Eleanor leaned her head against the wall, clutching her phone so tight it hurt. Something deep inside told her this wasn't a trip. This was a goodbye disguised as one. But she didn't know yet truth was a slow burn. Tomorrow, she would find out how far a man could go to erase the life he left behind. The knock on the door came hard enough to rattle the pipes that whispered inside the walls. Eleanor flinched. For a second, she hoped it was Lucas. But when she opened the door, it was Martha Lopez, her neighbor from across the hall, holding a folded newspaper and worry in her eyes. "You need to see this," Martha said, pushing it into her hands. The headline blurred as Eleanor read, "Local accountant, missing after company layoffs." Her breath caught. The photo was Lucas, same navy suit, same gap in his front teeth, same man who promised a business trip. "But he said he was going to Chicago," Eleanor whispered. Martha's voice lowered. "My cousin works at that office. He didn't get laid off. He quit 2 weeks before he told you that story." The truth was a slow burn, but now it hurt fast. Eleanor grabbed her coat. "I need to see for myself." The gray sky hung low as she walked the cracked sidewalk to his old office building. Cool floor under her bare feet replaced by hard pavement and pounding heartbeats. Inside, the air smelled like paper and cologne. The young clerk, badge-reading Jules Miller, looked up from behind the load counter. "Excuse me," Eleanor began, voice shaking. "I'm Lucas Graves' wife. I'm trying to find him." The clerk frowned, typing something. "Ma'am, Mr. Graves isn't with us anymore." Her hands gripped the counter. "When did he leave?" Jules hesitated. "His last day was 2 weeks ago. He didn't say where he was going. Just packed up." Eleanor's voice fell to a whisper. "He told me yesterday he was flying out for work." Jules's eyes softened. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Outside, the air felt thinner. Every step home felt heavier than the one before. Martha waited by the door, holding a cup of coffee and hoped she didn't feel. "Find anything?" "He lied," Eleanor said simply. "He quit before he left us." That night, Noah woke coughing again. The old ceiling fan groaned overhead as Eleanor rubbed his back, whispering, "You're okay, baby." When he fell asleep, she stood by the window, looking at the flickering streetlights. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. A chill ran through her. She pressed the call button. Silence. Then a click. "Lucas?" she breathed. A woman's voice answered. Calm, cold, confident. He's with me. Don't call again. Eleanor froze. Who is this? The line went dead. The hum of the fridge filled the silence, and the quiet felt wrong again, deeper this time. Final. The next morning, she went to the police station. A broad-shouldered man in a worn leather jacket introduced himself as Detective Ray Stone. His handshake was firm but kind. I'm used to finding people who don't want to be found, he said. Eleanor slid Lucas's photo across the table. Find him. I just need to know why. Ray studied the picture, then looked up. If he left you like this, he's hiding something. You ready to find out what? Eleanor nodded. Tears steady, but eyes sharp. Now something new inside her. Forming. Resolve. Ray would soon find where Lucas went, but what they'd discover in that storage unit would break more than her heart. The phone rang again at dawn sharp, slicing through the hum of the fridge and the tired silence that clung to the small apartment. Eleanor's hand trembled as she grabbed it. She hadn't slept. The pipes whispered, the ceiling fan moaned, and Noah's soft breathing came from the other room. Lucas? She whispered. A pause. Then a woman's voice, smooth, calm, practiced. He's with me. Eleanor's throat closed. Who is this? The woman's tone sharpened. You need to stop calling. He wants peace. Respect that. Peace? Eleanor's voice cracked. He left his family with unpaid bills, a late rent, and a cold house. My son asks where his father is every night. The line went dead. Her phone slipped from her hand, hitting the cool floor under her bare feet. The sound echoed. Martha rushed in wearing her robe, messy hair framing her worried face. Who was that? Eleanor stared at the phone, eyes wet. Not a stranger. The woman who answered said, He's with me. Martha's mouth fell open. He has someone else? Eleanor didn't answer. She walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside. Outside, the gray sky sat heavy over the town, a lid on the whole world. It wasn't just rain pressing down, it was humiliation. Later that day, she went to Patrick Moore's office, Lucas's father, hoping for an ounce of truth. Patrick was tall, silver-haired, with a polished calm that always made her feel small. Behind his mahogany desk, everything gleamed like a picture someone might use to sell happiness. Patrick, please, she said, voice shaking. Where is your son? Patrick sighed, folding his arms. Lucas told me you were becoming difficult, too emotional. Eleanor blinked. Emotional? He abandoned us. You're overreacting, Patrick said smoothly. Men need space, Eleanor. You push too much, you drive. Tell them away. Try to be more supportive. She stared, stunned. You're blaming me? I'm saying this isn't helping anyone, he replied, eyes cold. You have a child. Focus on that. Something in Eleanor hardened. She stood. You're right, Mr. Moore. I do have a child. And I'll focus on him since no one else will. She walked out, jaw tight, holding back tears until she reached the car. Inside, the silence heavier than shouting, she screamed into her sleeve. That night, she couldn't eat. Noah played on the floor with toy cars while she sat at the kitchen table, holding her phone like it might bite. Every sound in the apartment felt too loud. The kettle hissed, the pipes whispered, the world spinning but her heart standing still. Her phone buzzed again, a new message. It wasn't Lucas. It was a photo. Lucas at a restaurant, smiling, with the same woman's glossy hair and sharp smile from before. Her arm around his neck, captioned, Starting fresh. Eleanor's hand shook. She whispered, You started fresh by erasing us. The truth was a slow burn, but tonight, it scorched. She didn't know yet. Soon she would find the proof hidden in a storage unit, and that proof would change everything. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, please, take a second to do it now. Every click, every share, every comment helps us keep telling stories that give strength to women and children who've been broken, forgotten, or silenced. When you subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're standing beside survivors, saying their stories matter. Turn on your notification bell so you never miss a story that could change a life. And in the comments, tell us where are you watching from and what part of this story spoke to your heart. The scream jolted Eleanor awake. Noah was coughing again, deep, painful, desperate. She rushed to him, holding his trembling shoulders as the ceiling fan spun lazily above them, stirring cold air instead of comfort. Breathe, baby, breathe, she whispered, her heart racing. The pipes whispered too, the old apartment shaking with each harsh cough. She threw on her coat and carried him into the night. The gray sky loomed, the streets slick from yesterday's drizzle. A flickering sign buzzed outside the small-town ER. Inside, the smell of antiseptic stung her nose. "Eleanor Graves?" a calm voice called. A woman in blue scrubs stepped forward. "Doctor." Carla Dixon, mid-30 seconds, warm brown eyes, calm voice, firm steps. "You're back again." Eleanor nodded, exhausted. "His inhaler? It's not working anymore." "Doctor?" Dixon knelt by Noah, checking his chest. "He's strong," she said softly. "He just needs consistency medicine, nutrition, rest." Eleanor's eyes burned. "Medicine costs money I don't have." Dr. Dixon hesitated, then pressed a card into Eleanor's hand. "Come to the clinic tomorrow. I'll see what I can do." When they got home, Noah fell asleep quickly. Eleanor stood in the dark kitchen. The hum of the fridge filled the silence. She looked at the half-empty cupboard, little money left, a few cans, one loaf of bread, and a jar of peanut butter. She picked up her notebook, flipping past pages of old grocery lists. On a clean page, she wrote, "Find a way. Work nights. Keep Noah safe." The ink smudged where a tear landed. Morning came gray and heavy. The kettle hissed, and the cartoons sang on the TV for Noah as she dressed in her diner uniform. The fabric was thin, the name tag scratched, but it meant survival. At Miller's Diner, the scent of coffee and fried eggs clung to her hair. She wiped counters, smiled at strangers, carried trays while her body ached. Martha dropped by once, leaving a bag of muffins on the counter. "You need strength too," she said softly. By night, Eleanor cleaned offices downtown. The hum of vacuums drowned her thoughts. Sometimes she'd pause at the window, seeing her reflection, eyes older, shoulders straighter. The truth was a slow burn, but she was burning stronger now. Still, when bills arrived, rent due, late fees, unpaid hospital charges, fear clawed back. She sat at the kitchen table, calculator in one hand, Noah's drawing in the other. "A purple house with a giant yellow sun," she whispered. "We'll get there, step by step." But as she spoke, her phone buzzed again. A message, unknown number. Her heart stopped. "Don't expect him back. Move on." Her fingers tightened around the phone. The words blurred, fury rising through exhaustion. She whispered to the empty room, "I'm not the one who should move on. He is." Tomorrow, she'd discover the storage unit and what Lucas had truly been hiding all along. The rainy Monday morning began with a letter sliding under the door. Eleanor bent to pick it up, hands trembling. The envelope was damp, edges torn. Inside was a late bill stamped red and a notice about rent due. She sank into a chair, staring at the ceiling while the ceiling fan spun slowly, whining like an old secret. From the floor, Noah's voice broke through. "Mom, can we make pancakes again?" He held the batter like a small holiday, trying to smile. Eleanor forced one back. "Half pancake for Daddy, remember?" Then silence. He looked down. "He's not coming back, is he?" Her throat tightened. "We'll talk after breakfast." But breakfast never came. The kettle hissed, the stove clicked, and outside, thunder rolled across the gray sky. Eleanor's eyes fell on the old toolbox beside the shelf, the only thing Lucas hadn't taken. Something inside rattled when she lifted it. Under a layer of rusted tools sat a small brass key labeled Unit 49 Coal Storage. Her breath caught. She remembered Detective Ray's warning. If he left without trace, he's hiding something. She called Martha, voice low. "Can you watch Noah for a few hours?" Martha arrived within minutes, coat half-zipped. "Where are you going?" "To find answers." The drive took her past cracked sidewalks and faded signs until she reached a lot of orange doors, lined like closed mouths. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy. She approached the front desk where a man in a security vest looked up. His tag read Ben Coleman, tall, bald, and kind-eyed. "Ma'am?" he asked. "I need to access a unit. It belonged to Lucas Graves." She held up the key. Ben checked his clipboard. "Unit 49. Been unpaid for months." "You the spouse?" "Was," she said quietly. Ben unlocked the rolling door, and metal screeched open. Inside was the ghost of her marriage. Rows of boxes, a folded suit jacket, and a framed photo of their wedding glass cracked, smile perfect. She opened the nearest box. Inside, financial papers, bank statements, and photos of Lucas. With another woman, the same glossy hair, the same sharp smile from the photo message. Each picture was labeled Business Trip 2010, Conference 2011, Chicago 2012. Eleanor's breath quickened. He didn't just leave us. He built another life. She dug deeper, finding a folder marked legal. Inside lay their marriage certificate, untouched. Still valid. Still binding. The truth burned cold. Every business trip, every silent phone, every broken promise, all rehearsed lies. Ben spoke softly from the door. "You okay, ma'am?" She turned, holding the certificate. "No, but I will be." Outside, she stood under the gray sky, the lid on the whole town pressing down. She clenched the papers to her chest. This time, she wasn't crying. She was planning. Because what she'd found today wasn't just proof, it was power. And 15 years later, when that same paper resurfaced at a wedding, it would stop time itself. The morning began with laughter, real laughter, the kind Eleanor hadn't heard in years. The cartoon sang on the TV, and the kettle hissed on the stove. Noah, now 19, taller than his mother, flipped pancakes with the last batter, pretending to be a chef. "Mom, remember when we used to split one pancake in half because we couldn't afford more?" he said, grinning. Eleanor smiled, her hair streaked with silver now, her face lined with grace instead of grief. "I remember. Half for you, half for Daddy," she said softly. The old pain still there, but quieter now, like an echo fading behind stronger sounds. The apartment looked different, brighter. The hum of the fridge no longer haunted, but steady, a heartbeat of stability. On the wall, Noah's childhood drawing, that purple house with a giant yellow sun, was framed. Beneath it, Eleanor's old notebook rested open on the counter, filled with check marks beside the goals she once wrote. Find a way, pay bills, keep Noah safe. 15 years, a lifetime. Dr. Carla Dixon, now a family friend, stopped by with a bag of muffins and a proud smile. "He got in," she announced, holding a college envelope. Eleanor gasped. "You're serious?" Noah opened the letter, his eyes wide. "Full scholarship," he read aloud. "Pre-law." The joy was quiet but deep, like a mountain after a storm. Single mother resilience had turned into victory. Later that day, Eleanor met Pastor Reed at the community center. The man had aged to softer face, gentler eyes. He shook her hand warmly. "You did it, Eleanor. You built something out of ashes." She smiled. "We built it, one shift at a time." He nodded. "That's what faith looks like, not loud, just steady." But beneath her peace lived one unresolved chapter. The storage unit papers, sealed away in a folder marked Lucas Graves, still sat in her drawer. Sometimes she thought of burning them. Sometimes she thought of mailing them. Mostly, she left them untouched, a relic of the man who tried to erase them. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Noah sat beside her at the window. "Do you ever miss him?" he asked quietly. Eleanor didn't answer right away. The gray sky turned gold, then soft blue. "I miss who I thought he was," she finally said. "But I don't miss the man who left us." Noah nodded slowly. "I just want him to see who we became." Eleanor looked at her son, strong, confident, calm. "Maybe someday he will." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. A message appeared. "Invitation enclosed. Hope you can make it. LG." Her breath froze. A cream-colored envelope slipped through the mail slot moments later. Eleanor's hands trembled as she tore it open, a wedding invitation, gold-lettered, elegant. The groom's name? Lucas Graves. She didn't know yet that her decision to attend would make the whole world stop, and a crowd would soon freeze when she walked in. The kettle hissed again, this time louder, almost angry, like the sound carried 15 years of swallowed words. The cream-colored envelope sat on the kitchen table, gold letters gleaming under the morning light. Eleanor hadn't touched it since last night. "Mom," Noah said quietly, standing by the counter in his college hoodie, hair messy, face serious. "You're shaking." Eleanor glanced at her trembling hands. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. The envelope still stared at her like an accusation. It wasn't just paper, it was a ghost with Lucas's handwriting. The same loops and flourishes she used to trace when signing rent checks for him. She tore it open finally. A gold ribbon slipped to the table. Inside, "Mr. Lucas Graves and Miss Avery Hollis request the honor of your presence." Eleanor froze. Avery. That name. The same voice from the phone all those years ago, the one that said, "He's with me." Her throat burned. Noah's fists clenched. "He's marrying her? After what he did to us?" Dr. Carla Dixon, sitting nearby with a mug of coffee, leaned forward. "You don't have to go, Ellie. You've built peace. Don't let him pull you back." Eleanor stared at the window, where the gray sky pressed down like old memories. "It's not about going back," she said softly. "It's about showing him and everyone that I survived." Martha Lopez arrived then, older now, her hands carrying a bag of muffins. "You already won, honey," she said, setting them down. "He can't hurt you anymore. But he's still out there, telling his story," Eleanor replied. "The one where I'm the problem." She opened her notebook, flipping to the last blank page. Her handwriting was steadier now. She wrote, "Attend. Speak truth. No anger, only truth." Pastor Reed came by later, his voice calm as always. "Eleanor, peace doesn't mean silence." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Then maybe peace starts with being heard." That night, she stood before her small mirror. Her reflection looked both strange and strong. She chose her outfit carefully, a simple black dress, pearl earrings, and the quiet confidence of a woman who had walked through storms. Noah appeared behind her. "You're really going?" She nodded. "Yes, but not to make a scene, to make a statement." He handed her a folded paper, the marriage certificate she had found in the storage unit years ago. "Take this. You might need it." Eleanor's breath caught. She tucked it into her purse beside her notebook. Outside, the air was crisp, the mountain road of the rest of her life stretching before her. She whispered, half to herself, half to the night, "I'm ready now." The car engine hummed, headlights cutting through the fog. Ahead lay a city of marble floors and gold ribbons, and when her heels touched that ground, silence itself would hold its breath. The city 2 hours away glittered like glass, polished, loud, and far too clean for the kind of story Eleanor carried in her chest. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, the mountain road of the rest of her life stretching behind her like a memory. She could smell the money before she saw it, the kind of air that pretended it didn't remember struggle. The hotel stood tall and gold, banners fluttering over the grand doors, the imperial estate. She parked near the edge, where the limousines didn't go. As she stepped out, the heels clicked on marble, echoing against the glass doors polished like air. Inside, chandeliers glittered. String music floated through the space. White roses, gold ribbons, perfect smiles trembling in the reflection of the glass. The hum of conversations softened when the crowd turned to look. A woman in a headset, Corey Lance, the hotel manager, approached with a polite smile. "Ma'am, are you a guest or part of the ceremony?" Eleanor lifted her chin. "I was invited." Corey scanned the list. Her eyes widened. "Eleanor Graves?" "Yes," Eleanor said simply. There was a pause, confusion, curiosity, a flicker of recognition before Corey gestured toward the grand hall. "Right this way." As she entered, the room's noise dimmed. The marble floor gleamed under her shoes, heels clicking in rhythm with the music. People turned. Well-dressed guests whispered, faces half smiling, half staring. At the altar stood Lucas Graves, tailored suit, polished watch, smile ready, 15 years older, but still the man who once said business trip. Beside him, Avery Hollis, the same glossy hair, the same sharp smile, wrapped in a river of white silk. Her hands rested on Lucas's arm like she owned his story. Lucas's jaw tightened when his eyes met Eleanor's. The air thinned. Even the string quartet hesitated. A hush rippled. The crowd whispered, "Who's she?" "Wait, did she just say Eleanor Graves?" Eleanor walked calmly, her simple black dress cutting through the shimmer like truth through glass. In her purse, her fingers brushed the marriage certificate, folded neatly beside her notebook. A man in a gray suit stepped forward. Graham Cole, Lucas's lawyer and best man. "Excuse me, ma'am, this is a private event." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm here." Avery tilted her head, smiling politely. "You must be mistaken. The press isn't allowed inside." Eleanor's voice stayed even. "I'm not press." She stepped closer to the altar, eyes never leaving Lucas's. "But you might remember 15 years ago, you left your wife and son to die." Gasps scattered through the hall. The air cracked like glass under pressure. Avery's painted smile faltered. Lucas tried to speak, but the officiant cleared his throat awkwardly. Ma'am, perhaps. Eleanor handed him an envelope. Read this before you proceed. The officiant looked uncertain but took it. Inside, the legal marriage certificate, untouched and valid. Every whisper stopped. Eleanor turned to the silent guests, her tone calm but sharp as truth. You may now decide what kind of man you're here to celebrate. And when the officiant's voice returned, what he said next would shatter everything they thought they knew about Lucas Graves. The silence that followed was almost sacred. You could hear the string music die mid-note, the soft thud of a heel on marble, and the faint hum of the chandelier above. The officiant, a retired judge named Harrison Ford, frowned down at the cream-colored envelope Eleanor had handed him. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the paper. Lucas took a half-step forward, his jaw tightened, voice low but sharp. What is this stunt, Eleanor? She didn't flinch. No stunt, just truth. The judge cleared his throat. This, he began, then stopped. His brow furrowed deeper. This is a legal marriage certificate, issued 15 years ago, between Lucas Graves and Eleanor Graves. Gasps rippled through, and the crowd. Whispers rose like a storm, white roses trembling in their vases, camera flashes blinking like nervous eyes. Avery's painted face went pale. That's impossible, she hissed. He told me. Eleanor's calm voice cut her off. He told you what? That I was dead? Forgotten? The judge looked up, his voice firmer now. Mr. Graves, are you aware that you are still legally married? Lucas's throat bobbed. That's ridiculous. We separated years ago. Eleanor's gaze stayed steady. Separation isn't divorce. A murmur of realization passed through the guests. Phones lifted, screens glowing, ready to capture what was quickly becoming a scandal. Graham Cole, the lawyer, rushed forward, sweat glistening under the bright lights. Your Honor, there must be some misunderstanding. Judge Ford raised a hand. The certificate is valid. There's no record of annulment or dissolution. Avery stepped back, clutching her bouquet like a shield. Lucas, tell them this isn't true. Lucas opened his mouth, but no words came out. Every lie he built now cracked like thin glass. Eleanor took one step closer. Her simple black dress caught the light, her pearls steady against her throat. You left your wife and son to die, she said softly. No word, no support, not even a call. And now you stand here pretending to start a new life when the old one is unfinished. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Guest gasps, whispers rising, a room falling silent and roaring all at once. The judge set the paper down, his voice echoing across the marble hall. This ceremony cannot continue. You are still legally bound to this woman. This wedding is suspended until further notice. Avery's hands shook. Her perfect smile trembled. You lied to me, she whispered. Eleanor's eyes met hers, briefly no malice. Only calm power. Now you know what it feels like. Lucas lunged forward. Eleanor, please. But, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on marble, head high. Behind her, the crowd erupted. Phones recording, voices overlapping, truth going live. By nightfall, the world would know what happened here, and by morning, his empire would start to fall. The flash of cameras lit the marble hall like lightning. Voices overlapped, phones lifted, and the truth went live before anyone could stop it. Eleanor stood near the exit, her hand still on the door, watching chaos unfold behind her. Eleanor, wait! Lucas shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. His tailored suit, once a symbol of control, now hung loose, wrinkled by panic. Avery's mascara streaked her cheeks, her bouquet crushed in her trembling hand. You lied to everyone, she screamed. Reporters surged forward. Lena Price, a local journalist known for covering high society scandals, pushed through the crowd, camera flashing. Mrs. Graves, she called, voice sharp. Do you have any comment for the record? Eleanor turned, calm amid the storm. Yes, she said softly. Tell them he left his wife and son to die, and now he tried to bury us twice. But truth doesn't stay buried. The crowd gasped again. The string quartet had long stopped playing. Only whispers filled the marble hall, bouncing off gold ribbons and shattered pride. Lucas tried to reach her, but security blocked him. Please, he begged. Eleanor, not like this. Let's talk privately. Her voice stayed steady, cutting through the noise. Privately? You made your betrayal public. You'll live your truth the same way. Phones recording, Screens glowing, hashtags forming in real time. Number, the real Mrs. Graves trended within minutes. The story had escaped the room. Avery turned on Lucas. You humiliated me in front of everyone. She threw the ring at him, the diamond clattering across the floor. You said she was gone. He grabbed her wrist, desperate. I didn't mean, don't touch. Me, she snapped, stepping away as guests gasped, murmuring. Lena Price zoomed in for the shot. Sir, care to respond to the accusation that you're still legally married? Lucas covered his face, voice trembling. It's complicated. Eleanor stepped closer, eyes cold but kind. No, it's simple. You lied to me. You lied to her. And now the world sees who you are. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded letter. This is what 15 years of silence looks like, she said, dropping it into his hand. 5 minutes of your shame for 15 years of my endurance. We're even. Then she walked out, the heels clicking one last time across the marble floor, through the glass doors polished like air. Behind her, voices swelled, shaky cell phone videos uploaded, and 1,000 strangers began to take sides. Outside, the warm air hit her face. She inhaled deeply. For the first time in 15 years, breathing didn't hurt. Her phone buzzed, notification sounds stacking. One headline flashed across the screen. Businessman Lucas Graves, exposed by wife at his own wedding video, hits 2 million views in 2 hours. Eleanor smiled faintly. The truth finally found its audience. But by tomorrow, when the empire started crumbling and the apology call came, she'd face one final choice: forgiveness or freedom. The internet erupted like a firestorm. Within hours, the video from the wedding flooded every feed, phones recording, screens glowing, comment, battlefield raging across platforms. Number the real Mrs. Graves hit #1 in trending, while number wedding of lies followed close behind. Lena Price, the same reporter who'd captured the moment, appeared on the morning news. Viewers, she said on camera, what began as a private ceremony has turned into a national scandal. The man exposed is businessman Lucas Graves, now facing not only a destroyed reputation, but possible legal consequences. At the small apartment 2 cities away, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the fridge steady behind her. Her phone kept buzzing, notifications stacking faster than she could swipe. Thousands of messages. Support, sympathy, admiration. You're brave. You did the right thing. We needed this story. Noah entered the kitchen, holding his own phone. Mom, people are talking about you everywhere. Look, he showed her a comment thread under the viral clip. That woman is a legend. Eleanor smiled faintly. Legends are just survivors who didn't give up. Meanwhile, across town, Lucas sat alone in his office. Blinds closed, tie undone, phone ringing nonstop. Screens around him replayed his own humiliation on loop. The look on Avery's face, Eleanor's calm voice, the judge halting the wedding. His assistant's voice cracked through the intercom. Sir, 3 board members have resigned. The sponsor pulled funding, and your company's leadership photo was removed from the website. Lucas buried his head in his hands. Turn it off, he muttered. But the world didn't turn off. At the hotel, Avery packed her bags. Her diamond ring lay on the desk, glittering uselessly. He said she was gone, she whispered to herself. He said she was nothing. Then she caught sight of a live interview. Eleanor's calm face, her quiet grace. Avery stared for a long moment, then turned off the TV. Maybe she's everything, she said softly, tears finally falling. Back on the news, Lena continued. Public opinion has shifted drastically. Some call Eleanor's act revenge, others call it justice. One thing's certain, this story has become a movement about truth, betrayal, and accountability. Eleanor leaned back, exhaling slowly. The quiet felt different now, not empty, but earned. The kettle hissed gently, and she poured tea into a chipped mug, the same one from years ago, the one Lucas left behind. She turned it in her hands and whispered, You left me pieces. I built a life with them. Her phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then froze when she saw the sender ID. Lucas Graves. Eleanor, please. Just 5 minutes to talk. I need to make things right. Her hand hovered over the screen. Noah stepped beside her. You don't owe him anything. She stared at the message, silent. The air thickened, heavy, uncertain. Tomorrow, He would come to her door with words he'd rehearsed for years, but not even he was ready for what she'd say next. The sound of the phone ringing wouldn't stop. It echoed through Lucas's penthouse like a siren for everything he'd lost. The screens glowing across his office showed headlines stacked against him. CEO, exposed at his own wedding, still legally married. The Eleanor Graves scandal. He slammed his hand on the desk. Turn it off! All of it! But Graham Cole, his lawyer and former best man, only sighed. His once pressed suit now hung loose, his face pale. You can't turn off the internet, Lucas. The board already voted. You're out. Lucas spun around, eyes bloodshot. Out? They can't. They did. Graham cut in. The contracts are gone. Investors pulled out. And your father, don't say it. Your father wants nothing to do with this. Graham finished quietly. Lucas's breath caught. Patrick Moore, the man who once defended every lie, had turned silent. The one call he'd made earlier came back with only 5 words. You ruined our family name. He stared at the city skyline, glowing cold through the glass. Just weeks ago, he stood above it, all tailored suit, shiny shoes, a man who thought he'd never fall. Now the city looked like judgment. The quiet felt wrong, but this time, it wasn't Eleanor's silence haunting him. It was his own. The door opened. Corey Lance, the hotel manager from the wedding, stepped in nervously. Mr. Graves, the hotel requests you clear your belongings tonight. There's media outside. Media? She hesitated. Dozens, sir. Cameras. Questions about the lies. And the woman you left. Lucas's face fell. She won. Corey looked at him gently. No. She survived. That's different. She left him standing there, surrounded by the hum of the fridge, the pipes whispering through the walls, reminders of the life he'd once mocked. His reflection in the window looked like a stranger. He saw the man who'd once said, business trip, and realized the truth. It wasn't success he wanted, it was control. And control was gone. He walked through the apartment, empty drawers, dent in his pillow, shirts gone, all reversed now. She had rebuilt. He had crumbled. His phone buzzed again. Another message. From Eleanor. Just one line. Be a real father first. Lucas read it twice, then sat heavily on the floor, the weight of every choice collapsing at once. He looked around the penthouse, glowing but hollow, all marble, no warmth. A knock sounded on the door. Graham's voice came muffled. They're here for the keys, Lucas. Lucas swallowed. Yeah, just give me a minute. He looked at the city again, the place that had once bowed to him. Now, it watched him like a witness. He whispered, almost to himself, you win, Eleanor. Tomorrow, when he finally gathered the courage to face her and Noah in person, it wouldn't be power he brought, only regret. The ballpark buzzed with the sound of cheering families, the crack of a bat, and a child's laughter somewhere behind the stands. But at the far edge of the bleachers, a different silence waited, one heavy and unfinished. Lucas Graves stood there, hands shaking, clutching an old letter. He wore no tailored suit now, just a wrinkled shirt and tired eyes that carried the weight of 15 years of consequences. He saw them before they saw him. Eleanor, seated beside Noah, was calm, poised. Her hair caught the sunlight, and her face, older, wiser, had the peace of someone who no longer needed closure to breathe. Lucas stepped closer, each footstep crunching like guilt on gravel. Eleanor, he said softly. She turned. Her eyes didn't widen in surprise. Lucas, for a moment, time folded. The past and present stood side by side. He remembered the woman he'd left beside a thin blanket, holding their coughing son. Now she was someone untouchable, rooted in her own strength. Noah stood, his voice steady. You shouldn't be here. Lucas looked at him, taller now, broad-shouldered, a reflection of everything he'd missed. You've grown. I had to, Noah replied. The quiet felt wrong, yet necessary. Lucas held out the letter. This was my apology. I wrote it after the wedding. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it out loud. Eleanor didn't take it. Apologies are meant for the living years, not the leftover ones. He swallowed hard. You have every right to hate me. She shook her head. I don't hate you, Lucas. I outgrew you. Noah's jaw tightened. You left us to die. You think words fix that? Lucas's shoulders sagged. No, son, but maybe you can still see the man I'm trying to be now. From the field, Coach Henry Blake, Noah's mentor and a retired ball player, called out. "Game's starting soon, kid." He gave Eleanor a small nod, sensing the storm. Noah looked between them. "Mom? Go play," she said softly. "We're fine." He hesitated, then walked toward the field, bat in hand. The sound of kids cheering filled the gap between them. Lucas exhaled shakily. "You raised him well." Eleanor nodded. "He raised me too." They stood in silence as the crowd clapped for a home run. Lucas finally asked, "Is there anything I can do to make it right?" She looked at him steadily, without malice. "Be a real father first. Then maybe. Someday, your son will choose if you deserve that title." He nodded slowly, eyes wet. "I'll try." Eleanor stepped back, lifting her chin. "Try quietly. The world's heard enough of your voice." As she turned to leave, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the field. The air shifted gentler, lighter as Noah's laughter echoed in the distance. Lucas stood there, watching the family he'd abandoned become the proof of his undoing. That night, a single letter would arrive at Eleanor's door, a letter not from Lucas, but from someone she never expected. The knock came just before dawn, soft, deliberate, and unfamiliar. Eleanor Graves opened her eyes to the gray lights sliding through the curtains. The hum of the fridge filled the silence as she tied her robe and walked to the door. A courier stood outside, holding a cream-colored envelope sealed with gold wax. "Delivery for Mrs. Graves?" he said. No sender's name. Her breath hitched. She thanked him, closed the door, and sat at the kitchen table. The kettle hissed, echoing like memory. The envelope looked like the one that started it all, the wedding invitation. But this time, the handwriting wasn't Lucas's. She broke the seal slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The letter began, "Dear Mom, I wanted to do this the right way." Eleanor's heart stopped. It wasn't from Lucas. It was from Noah. She read on. "You always said forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about freeing yourself from what chained you. I met Dad yesterday after the game. He's not the man he was. I didn't forgive him for you. I forgave him for me and for us." Her fingers trembled. "I told him the truth, that the best thing he ever did was leave, because it taught you how strong you were." He cried, "Mom," and for the first time, I didn't feel hate. I felt peace. I wanted you to feel that too. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. The quiet felt different now. Warm, earned, alive. As the ceiling fan turned gently above her, Eleanor folded the letter and pressed it to her heart. She whispered, "You learned the lesson I hoped you would." Moments later, Martha Lopez let herself in, carrying a bag of muffins still warm from the oven. "You're up early," she said, setting them down. Eleanor smiled through tears. "I had a letter." "From him?" She shook her head. "From Noah, about forgiveness." Martha smiled softly. "Then maybe the mountain's been climbed." Dr. Carla Dixon arrived soon after for her morning check-in, her warm eyes scanning Eleanor's face. "You look lighter today." "I am," Eleanor said. "For the first time in 15 years, I'm not waiting for anything, not revenge, not apology, not closure. I already have it." Pastor Reed stopped by with a small box wrapped in brown paper. "Church fundraiser," he said, placing it beside her. Inside were photos from the community kitchen. Eleanor helped build families smiling, children laughing, pancakes on paper plates. Eleanor looked around the room. Butter, smell, laughter filling the kitchen, dog in the yard, Noah humming in the next room. She whispered to herself, This is home." She took out her old notebook, flipped to the final page, and wrote 3 words in steady ink. "We made it." The sun poured through the window, scattering gold over the table. For a long moment, she simply breathed deeply, freely, finally. Then, her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen from an unknown number. "Your story changed lives. Would you consider speaking at our Women of Resilience conference?" Eleanor smiled, eyes glistening. "Maybe it's time to share it." She looked into the camera of her phone and whispered, "Hello, family. Please subscribe. We're keeping hope alive. Because somewhere out there, another woman is still waiting for her morning of peace. And this story might just remind her that the greatest revenge is moving on.